Welcome to One-Weighted Machines and the B7 Audi RS4 series. In this video, we will finally be changing the cracked coolant reservoir and more. Let's go over the way I'm going to do it. The battery on my car is in good shape, but even though I'm using it regularly now, the car, I still put the maintainer on whenever I get home just to make sure everything is good and the battery stays good. For those of you that actually watch the channel, that NOCO boost there is what I said when there might be a trick to get the starter solenoid to activate when it doesn't want to cooperate. Again, the electricals might be more complex on the car, but I've heard from old timers that this is one trick to get a sticky starter solenoid to sometimes release more quickly to engage the starter. By putting this on the car's battery, it gives just a bit of extra voltage to get it going. I did have to do that today. The starter didn't go off right away, and I hooked this up to the battery directly because, again, the terminals at the front, I'm not sure how much you're supposed to use them for jumping purposes, but right on the battery, again, this might be just wishful thinking on my part, but I did feel like a weird jolt that the starter got that I hadn't known of before. So this is just like experimental. I'm going to carry this with me when I use the car because there are definitely going to be times when it's cold and the car may not want to start. And for that reason, you guys can follow this. But this will probably be spread out throughout all of my series. What happens with this, if this is even something you can do. In terms of blocking off the coolant lines, there are specific plastic pliers for doing that. This is not the conventional method. This is how I do it. I just use normal vice grips on, say, that bigger hose at the bottom of the reservoir, and I'm going to cut a paint stick into short pieces, and that's going to give the soft but hard enough clamping force to hold that coolant line together so that it doesn't leak throughout the process. But both of the coolant lines are in a way on this car that it's not even that big of a deal, the amount you lose. You just don't want the coolant to leak and possibly get on an electrical connector and cause some crazy stuff. But even that's a very rare chance. Now, these small vice grips there, if you really want to crimp off the one at the top, you'll see all this when we go over to the car. You can use it, but it has heat sheathing, some kind of protective sheathing, and then it has some weird coupling joints on the coolant hose, and it's all EPDM stuff, so I'm not even going to bother doing that, and it's going to have very minimal that's going to come out of it, so I'm just going to catch that with a microfiber out of that really small one at the top. So that's your call. You don't need a drill, but just a Phillips screwdriver to undo the one thing that we're going to transfer over onto the new coolant reservoir, because it's a plug for one of the covers on the car. So this here is just a 150 mil syringe with a piece of 3/8 line on the end. The 3/8 line I cut and put on myself from Home Depot. Get a long set of that, use it a lot in automotive. I got this like a pack of 4 off Amazon. It's very handy. I use them for diffs and stuff like that all the time. This is a new one that we're going to dedicate to coolant. I do have a funnel. If you use a funnel, it's just easier. But if you are pouring out of a bottle, just always pour out of the side and you can get it directly in without spilling all over the place. This is concentrate. You're going to want to have 50-50, okay? But I'm not adding any coolant because the coolant is new, as you guys know. So washer fluid containers I always keep, very handy for automotive stuff. Just see, this has a bit of washer fluid left in it. I don't know what the mix is for this. You don't want to get this into your coolant. So just make sure you rinse it out if you're going to use it to reuse your coolant. Okay, so I'm just going to rinse this out and I'm going to siphon over my coolant into this and then back into the car in the new one. In terms of removing the hoses, just needle nose pliers will work. Those longer ones, we're going to try to grab a bolt out of the intake manifold that I dropped in there a long time ago. I think I've mentioned it before, but those smaller pliers should do just fine for this. Any pliers will do for the clamps. The reason I had all these bottles here is don't rush this, okay? Make sure you use a clean container, a water bottle, coolant jug, something that doesn't have, say, a lot of concentrate left in it, and you just mix it in there. Stuff might be overkill, but just get 50-50 back in your car. Use a clean container if you're reusing. A T30 on a standard ratchet just to loosen the one bolt for the cover that's beside the coolant reservoir. Sometimes you can just pull the cover up, but loosening it is just a bit better in my experience. So I'm just going to cut this paint stick. I only need 2 pieces for the amount I'm using, so 2 pieces about 1 inch long should do fine with the vice grips. So the bracket for the carbon engine cover has 3 bolts, and I think way back I dropped one of them inside the intake manifold there. Not inside, but inside the housing there. So with these new 13-inch bent nose and straight pliers, I'm going to try my best to pull it out. Be careful this doesn't happen to you if you're ever working on the car. So there you guys can see the bolt. It's shifted back a bit because I tried once to grab it. I might not even be able to get it. Doesn't hinder anything. I just do want to get it out. So it's there. Let's see. I'll tell you which tool I get it with. So neither of the pliers worked. I even tried with that 90-degree pick to dislodge it. But right now it is just stuck inside one of the pieces of this intricate intake manifold very tightly. So it's not going to fall. It's not going anywhere. We're just going to have to wait until later. So obviously my saw is overkill for this, but I also didn't have a vise or a smaller saw in hand. This is the first thing in hand. Just cut those a bit and then they snap off. Just deburr them a little bit and you're good to use them. So just loosen a little bit the bolt here and pop out that plastic bracket. Be gentle with the weather stripping when you're doing this. And there's that pop tab that's part of the coolant reservoir that this just came off with. So now I'm just going to siphon out the coolant into my washer fluid container. And we'll continue. And if you really want to at-home style it, you can use a turkey baster too. If you don't have these tools, just so you buy less stuff. What we're going to do though is just with this, pull it out. And on a level surface, I have my washer fluid container. Don't put the container or your bottle somewhere here as you could knock it over and spill it. I am doing this in a pinch, but if you're doing this, get a new genuine cap as well. I'm not sure if that's the actual part number there. For some of you, that's a 4B, and it has an Audi VW stamp on it. I think this is original. It's there on the screen. I will show you the OE part number for the reservoir though. So there it is. The F is the important part for the S4 B7 B6 and the RS4 B7. Okay, just let a couple drips go down so you don't work dirty. And if you really want to, you can carry it over with a cloth, but it's really not necessary. So I just even adjusted the tripod and the camera while I had this syringe in my hand. Not a single drop. This is a very reliable way of doing it. The advantage to using this versus a turkey baster is this is much faster. So, a couple drips, just wait, and then carry over. And I'm holding the syringe further into the washer fluid container. I just did that one on camera for cinematic purposes so you could see it spilling in. Well, hopefully I don't spill anything, but in real time, make sure your 3/8 hose is really on there. It fell off that one time. Luckily, it was not at a point where there was fluid in it, but make sure your 3/8 line is really onto the syringe there. Okay, and let me add one thing. The 3/8 line actually doesn't sit so perfectly on it because I've used this for diff fluids. When you're working with it, hold it from here too, okay? Just so that you don't have a mishap. And spill coolant. Okay, so on some laugh as you go stuff, I just dropped the 3/8 line into my washer fluid container. One size down from 3/8 is what works. That's what I had bought for the Volvo sunroof drain, so that's what I used on these. But clearly you need a size a bit smaller. So take your Amazon syringe into Home Depot and make sure to put a clear line on there that fits perfectly. And you won't end up with the same mess that I just did, but I gotta fish that out now. So fishing it out was not feasible at all. I luckily had an extra piece of 3/8 line that I'm gonna cut. Actually, I'm not gonna cut it. See, this is actually better. This is a longer piece because now I actually have to get deeper into the coolant reservoir. You don't need it to be 2 feet long, but about 1.5 feet is probably good to do the whole thing, okay? Because we got to get a bit deeper in there as the mouth is here and you got to get all the way down. Or actually, I don't know. Maybe it'll be on the other side there. In any case, about 1 foot is good. I'm just going to cut this in half and use that so I have some spare for my other ones. But just some real-time things you see. Maybe using a turkey baster is easy so you don't run into this crap. Or you can even hose clamp this to your syringe, but that's just getting extra over the top. On second thought, I'm not going to cut it just in case there's odd crevices inside there that I have trouble getting coolant from. But this stuff I'm doing is a bit overkill. Hopefully it doesn't annoy you guys. You can also just turn this and point it upward so that it doesn't spill as you carry it over. So it is really easy with the 2-foot extension. It gives you a nice place to hold on to as you empty into your washer fluid container too. So this stuff is cheap. Just get it from Home Depot and use it. And 3/8 line is more than fine if you hold on to it. That was just an older piece of hose. So I don't know if those will work with these Amazon syringes, but 3/8 will definitely work. Okay, just be careful and hold on to it, you'll be fine. See, it jumps out like that sometimes if you're not paying attention. I mean, this is a really simple job, but these odd things are happening, so I'll tell you. It's really weird to one-handed aim that into the washer fluid container, and I definitely will say go with the longer hose because there's no chance it'll fall in the container, the washer fluid container, or in that container at any point. Okay, in either one, if it jumps off of the syringe, then you have no problem. You just grab it. You just put it back on. But the shorter piece, like you saw what happened to me, fell in there. So even though it's overkill, use a longer hose. And just in case my klutziness has helped some of you, okay? Again, hose clamp you could put here, but that's kind of crazy. Most of you won't have that. Just make sure when you're transferring stuff or doing anything, you got to pinch here, okay? And you're controlling with here. Then, once you put this in the container, whichever container, refilling or emptying, then use your other hand to do this part, okay? Whether you're filling or refilling, but make sure you're always pinching this part, and you'll be fine. Okay, so see, right now we still have some coolant left in there. One of the things I'm going to do when I take the reservoir off, see, we might be fine to do it right now, right here in this position. Once we get the clamp off there, pinch off here, I'm going to tilt the reservoir backwards when I pick it up so that this little bit here doesn't fall out of the lowest point of the reservoir, okay? Then we're going to undo the Phillips screw here. We'll deal with the other one afterwards for the bracket. And underneath, there is an Audi connector, an electrical connector, the coolant level sensor. Screwdriver pick, however you do it. I've shown this a million times in the different series, and you should know how to remove an Audi connector, okay? You click, pull it up. There's a couple different tricks. Just don't break anything. I am going to try to reach my hose way in, and let's see if we can just get a bit more out. But like I said, this is probably not necessary. Okay, so I tried a couple angles there, and I couldn't get the hose to go through the labyrinths and get all the way there. So what I kind of just said before is what we're going to do to avoid spillage. And again, spillage avoidance is mostly for not getting stuff onto your coil packs or sensitive electricals that could be faulty after all these years. Even on a new car, you don't do this. So just stick with it. So you can see I spilled a bit on one of my attempts there when I was telling you guys how I'm doing it. Push everything off to the side, close the door on your coolant so you don't kick it over or anything. And now let's move on to the other parts. So as I said, for that clamp, I'm just going to have a rag underneath to catch the small amount that comes out of it. I'm not going to bother pinching it. Here, let me show you. This is the reason I'm not such a fan of pinching on this particular hose. See, it's got that odd crimp thing. It's got the shield. It's got more crimping down there. I don't know what materials and what brackets are inside there, so I'm going to play it safe. Son of a bitch, I hate this clamp. I don't know why. There's no other clamp on this car. It gives me a harder time than this one. There are also clamp pliers that are specific to these kind of two-ear things that I recently saw. So buy those if you want, but I'm still a needle nose person. Why isn't it working today? You know what? I'm going to bring it this way this time. No, actually, it's not going to work. It's not going to go anywhere. Easy does it. Easy does it. Over the sheath. See, that sheath is so sensitive. The clamp barely ever wants to clear it. Come on. Come on, come on. Work it through. Come on. Jesus, come on. So I'm using my thumb to move it back because it's such a tight fit with that sheath. And the clamp sometimes wants to get caught onto the sheath as you're doing this and tear and damage it. See, I got it there. In the future, I might put just a worm clamp on this one. So I never wanted, I didn't mean, this is the sheath. This whatever it is, coupler, bracket, plastic, Audi Brilliance thing. Okay, let's see if we need a little bit of pick persuasion. I always try not to do this, but even that's fine. Let's see how it comes off. Oh, and you got to be really careful with this, okay? People break these and it seems like this is a Germany part and it goes all the way down there. Okay, so very gentle removal of this. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. You see, you don't need to crimp for no reason. Not a drop of coolant came out of there. The logic that I was going to say before this video started is that coolant is so high, there can't even be any coolant trapped inside there. It's the same as the air level in the reservoir is lower. So you don't need no rag. I should have just said that from the beginning. So there's a connector underneath. I remembered that's the last thing. Once you have the coolant reservoir on the way out, if you don't want to remove this crazy vacuum line, which is probably some way crazy, once it's coming out, we're going to tip it back. And then I'm going to use my screwdriver, pick whatever I choose to take that electrical connector off carefully. You want to deal with this hose before you remove that screw so that everything is sturdy. So I'm going to move the clamp back. We're going to clamp the hose. And then we're going to take the hose off. But that being intact may help you if this is on tight. But it shouldn't be because it's a plastic. Whatever. Okay, so that's the approximate setting of my standard set of vice grips. You want it to be just about thick enough for your two shims there when it is in the locked position. So I'm going to open it up just a bit there and we should be good. Come on, I almost had it. Okay, I'm a little tight there and I cracked the paint stick, so just keep loosening it until there. Okay? That's good. And work the hose off. Put a rag underneath just because there's some right at the bottom of the... You really didn't even need to crimp this one. Okay? The juice is going to fall out of that anyways. Okay, you know what? I didn't pull it off, so no juice spilled. I'm actually just going to push it back a little bit again. And I'm going to take the screw off. Okay? See, I'm talking, so it's starting to leak a bit because I did that. But I'm going to take the screw off so that right when I take it off, I can tilt it back. And I'm going to put a rag underneath. Stuff is crazy overkill, but you don't want coolant on electricals. That's the automotive standard, I guess. So I'm lifting both up together, kind of just like that, and see, that was the most minimum loss there. Okay? Barely anything spilled. Alright, but now that I'm here, you see I got my rag in there. I hope the camera's there. I'm not taking any more risks of spilling stuff, okay? But if I did this all in one motion, I wouldn't have spilled any fluid without the filming. So I'm just going to dip it down a bit onto my microfiber. It's going to dump just a bit of coolant in there onto my microfiber, because it's all clamped off, okay? And now see, here's my connector. Okay, you know what? I'll put this down for a second to shift the camera. Maybe my face was in front of the camera, so if I edit it out, oh my God, okay. Oh man, this is a lot harder to film than I thought this one. Okay, so now maybe you can see that connector there. When I go and tilt it up a bit, I'm easily going to be able to get my finger on there and snap it off because I know mine's healthy, but you may have to use a pick or a screwdriver. But what I was saying before about moving these two up, the reservoir that way and the hose this way is the most important, but do have the rag because there's an inevitable couple of drips that's going to fall. And it is above the coil packs, and God knows what your electricals and seals are. So maybe this really being careful thing that I'm doing, do it to the best of your abilities. But those paint sticks, they did work. Okay, they did crimp it off. Nothing came out from the closest crimping point that I could get to the reservoir. Okay, so hopefully my head wasn't in the way there, but I eventually used a pick. Grabbing onto it wasn't good, so you guys saw at the 90 degree I just pushed and it popped out. Still holding this up because there's a ton of coolant in here on this angle. I'm going to slide it out of those two tabs at the back. Okay, the camera's there. There's those two tabs it slides under into. Shouldn't be doing this, but you see there's still a lot of coolant in it. If you didn't take it out on this angle, this coolant could have come right out of this port and spilled all over everything. But there's just a hair dripping from that hose onto the microfiber, but it's more than capable of absorbing all of it. It's so minimal. So that's still that spill from before. That's not from right now. Put it down like this on the ground. I mean, you're not going to be filming, so you can just carry it right over. Actually, no, you put it down so you can open your washer fluid cap, and then we're just going to tilt it and pour whatever's left into the washer fluid container. So you see I'm always carrying it on this angle until the last finish. Alright, so I got coolant on my camera, which is fine, but you can see it's completely empty now. And, okay, not completely empty, but yeah, it's empty. I'm just going to dip it a bit more and we'll keep her going. Okay, so this is the piece you need to transfer over for the cover that clips into it. I'm going to try the Phillips. There's also a wrench you could use on it. Let's see how easily this comes off. Oh! You see, even when I see it, I'm being an idiot. That's a normal Phillips that I had. This is way bigger than a standard Phillips. So I'm just gonna grab a wrench quickly and my hands are slippery with coolant, but like a little bit of coolant, but okay. So, okay, I'm talking too much there. Yeah, it's plastic threaded. Just be careful and transfer it over. So now that it's out of the bag, there's the sticker on the new one. That 8EO number is the important one for your ordering, okay? I'm using my phone, sorry, my camera, but if you're using your phone during this job, and even if you have a lick of this coolant, I've mentioned a million times how slippery it is, so be careful not to drop anything. I've shown this coolant reservoir. Man, the light really doesn't like that one. But the old one, okay, this is the last time we're probably going to look at it. Why is the camera so crap? Oh my god, I swear my phone is better at filming sometimes than a $1,000 camera. But I've shown definitely in previous parts of the RS4 series all the bulges and cracks on this. There you guys, you can see on the flat plane, there's some. On the bottom, there's all of these cracks. There's more there on the left. This really likes warm light, so if you really want to see all the bumps and problems that this old one had, I think I have a series where I'm trying to order parts from a while back and I'm upstairs with warm lighting and I show this stuff a lot better. But look for cracks, look for bulges, bumps, and change the stuff before it starts leaking and you could have problems. Electrical if it leaks on it, or this thing just leaks your coolant out and it's an annoying thing. Okay, so let's screw the other one into this now. So the hole does not look to be threaded on the new one. It was on the old one, but I think the plastic just eats into the other plastic. So let's just go by hand and see what happens first. But it might need some wrench force. Just try to go straight because you're plastic on plastic, okay? Usually everyone's crying because of plastic on metal. This is plastic on plastic. So if you go sideways, yeah, so see, I'm putting really even force and I'm going by hand and it's still not perfect, but it doesn't just push in, okay? There's a reason there's a screw and a thing on it. Just really take your time. I shouldn't be doing this on camera, but screw it. See, I'm pressing this against my stomach like a third point, and then my two hands are my second and third point, so I can forcefully screw this in straight, okay? But it is working. It is eating into the other plastic. We'll only see how good it is when I'm done. But see, once you get to here, actually it's going all the way. Maybe the last two turns just do with the wrench, but you can do the whole thing by hand if you have a little bit of strength. So the last turn I'm going to do with the wrench there. And you know you're good when it's bottomed out on the hex part and on the bottom. This thing is so bright, it just won't contrast with the table, so I don't know what to say. Okay, so couple turns there, but you see it doesn't go bottom out all the way. There's a little ring there. That ring is where you stop. Don't go too crazy and trip up your plastic, but we're in business. So now I'm just going to reinstall everything. Just make sure you plug your connector in and hear the click before anything else on your way in, okay? And then put in this hose, then the top hose, and then your screw, and you're good. But guys, having a microfiber, even if you have 2 or 3, even slightly dirty ones, just throw them in there for peace of mind if you get a bit of coolant. Because I got just a hair, a quarter's worth. I don't know if that's even a measurement standard, but just have that there, okay? Because that's the whole point of doing all this crazy stuff. And this isn't a car with a lot of airspace where you can just let it dump underneath, okay? There's sensitive stuff everywhere. And I know I've talked about this in other series, but this is only the coolant reservoir, so I'm going to say it again. These two tabs slide downwards first into those 2 spots, and then everything else comes into place. So slide those 2 tabs in. Wait a second. No. Whew. Whew, okay. You got to put the electrical connector. Let's see what I do. Either you're going to put it in and put the electrical connector after, or do the electrical connector first and then slide into those and then bring it down. Okay, so those two have good range of motion. So do put them in there as a standard, as again, a tripod. 1, 2, 3, your hand here. Okay, once you're in there, grab your electrical connector gently. Do not ever touch the wires and listen for the click. The wires are very exposed. Be careful. Okay, now we'll bring her down, set it down. I'm actually going to put in that Phillips screw first, again, to make it sturdy, and then we're going to slide the two hoses on. There is a line on this, okay, that needs to align with the line on the reservoir.